Hey there, high performance golfers and committed golfers out there. If you are watching this, that means you are up to big things. That means you love to dream big, and not just dream big, you love to execute it. You love to go after it, put a game plan together, and actually map that thing out to go ahead and achieve those big things that, most casual golfers just won't understand or won't be as committed to doing. So, I want to share with you guys how to accelerate your path to those big dreams, right? What we do here is it's all about acceleration, and not just acceleration and going fast. It's about having a fulfilled time and having a great time doing it. And so, I want to share with you the model first that most will use. And although it works, it does not accelerate your results. And if you are using this model, I would highly recommend you guys taking a deep look into this model and see, is it serving you at your highest level, or is there a better way? Right, this model is this. The model is, if you're using the model that states world-class instruction plus more practice equals great results. And let me repeat that. If you're using the model that says world-class instruction or technique plus more practice equals great results, world-class results, best results in the world. And that's a great model to start with, or it's a great model, don't get me wrong, right? I've been on that model for myself for years and years and years growing up as a junior golfer, as a collegiate golfer, right? And I even started coaching through that model, right? Looking for the best technique and just recommending go practice. Give them the technique and go practice, right? And so if you've ever had coaches in the past, or maybe you're a coach watching this, and I've done it for so many years, especially early in my career, is we get trained and we look at the very best technique, what's working, and use that technique, and then we prescribe, okay, now you got this, go ahead and practice for the next week, and then I'll see you next week. Or maybe it's a client that would be like, go practice this for 2 weeks because it's pretty new, and then come back in 2 weeks, make sure you practice, and then we'll review it then, right? And again, I ask you to see if that's serving you at your highest level, because if that was the formula for success, then everybody would be world-class golfers. Then everybody would be on tour. And when we start to look at what separates the best players in the world from everybody else, right? There's even a gap from the top 5 players on tour, whatever tour you're looking at, and the rest. There's a big difference from the players on tour that makes the cut and the rest that miss. There's a big difference from the tour versus the mini tour, right? Big difference from the mini tour to amateur golf, collegiate golf, like world-class amateur golf. There's big gaps, right? And every gap, we can see that this model or this formula of world-class instruction plus more practice equals great results. And we can, best players in the world, do they have world-class technique? Absolutely they do. Do they practice a lot? Absolutely. But so does everybody else who's committed, and so does everybody else who is high performing, right? If you're a high performer and you're committed, you love to work hard, right? It excites you to want to do things and move forward. And with social media everywhere, there's technique. You can get the best technical advice in the world. And again, you can get the best technical advice in the world all for free, right? You can get the best practice plan on how to practice in the world from the best in the world, and go and implement that. And when we look at the big scope of golf, golfers are just not getting better, right? Don't get me wrong, there's golfers that get really, really good, but in the big scope of it, you would think golfers would be getting better so much faster, but they're not. And so check into that model, because is it about the technique? Yes, it's about the technique. Is it about practice? Yes. But it's not only that. The one piece that you're missing, and when you start to look at it, is about skill sequencing. So when you look at, you might be asking, well, what is skill sequencing? It's actually looking at the skill, not the technique, the skill that matters the most, the skill that's gonna move you the most to make the biggest improvements in not just your golf game, but the biggest improvements in your life, in your enjoyment, to get you to want to do the practice consistently, right? What is the thing that's most important, right? And for some of us, score is important. For others, it's going to be hitting it far. For others, it's what's going to keep you in the game long enough for you to be committed to the big picture and actually hit it in the time frame that you give yourself, right? And so again, right, skill sequencing is the most important thing. And once you understand what the skill is, then it becomes the technique that's going to drive that skill, right? And so when we look at, I need to get this skill, then we live into this world of mastery. When we start living in the world of mastery, we start to get results because you don't stop until you have mastered that skill. When we go through the model of best technique plus more practice equals great results, what happens is the technique could not be related week to week. They don't compound on each other. Because one week it will be masterful technique on hitting your driver. Another week it would be masterful technique on your putting. Another week it would be masterful technique on, ball flight, curvature, high, low, face control. Another week it would be strategy on the golf course. And you have all this great world-class technique that is, again, it's the best in the world, but now, we have so much information. We have 10 things, and maybe we're doing one or two things at a high level, but pulls us away, and we're not investing our time in the thing that's gonna move us the most. And so we just get spread too thin, but with all this advice, and now we leads to frustration, leads to doubt, because now we know how to do it, but we can't execute. We know when we're doing it right, we know when we're doing it wrong, but yet we still can't do it consistently, right? And when there's that seriously big gap between what you know and what you can actually execute, that's where frustration lies. When you start to think of, okay, I know how to do it and I'm just off, not very frustrated. But when I know exactly what I'm doing, and for those of you watching, exactly, like I get into this boat sometimes, right? My students get into this boat, and it's my job to course correct. But we get into that place like, yes, I know exactly what I'm doing. I look at it on the film, I can feel it. But then when I go out and hit balls or go out and play, like, it's just not even the same. And when you get that major separation in that gap, right? A lot of times, right, we need to understand, where does frustration come from? Frustration, anger, disappointment comes from the gap between what you know and what you can actually execute. Your expectation of what you want and what actually happens, right? And so it's about narrowing that gap. And the only way you start to narrow the gap where you can execute what you know is by living in this world of mastery, and then looking into skill sequencing versus world-class technique. What is the skill that is required for you to make the biggest moves in your golf game, in your life, to get you to stay on the mission, stay on the plan, stay consistent every single day, every single week, every single month, every single year? Because you see, consistency is the key. Where the thing that's going to get you moving, right? If you can win the days, right, it allows you to win the weeks, right? And even looking at a skill like that, we talk about skill sequence. What's a skill of winning and getting my goals? Like looking at what's most important. Like a lot of times we look at, I want to be able to, hit this big, massive goal in a month, in 3 months, in the year. I want to get to here. But we can't even bring it back to say, what would get me to win today? Right? And so when we look at the big picture, that is, right, just as an example, is if you want to win the year, that means you got to win three quarters or 9 months out of the year. Right? So you can go one quarter that's off and you still win the year. Right? And when you start to look at how to win the quarter, how to win the next 3 months, you have to win 60 out of the 90 days to get you in that positive for winning the month. So now we're starting to skill sequence like winning. How do I win? Right? Win 2 out of the 3 months, wins the quarter, wins the season. And now we start to look at, okay, if I have to win the month. How do I win the month? Right? I got to win 3 out of 4 weeks out of the month. Right? And start to look at, okay, 3 out of 4 weeks. Got it. That gets me to win the month. How do I win the week? There's 7 days in a week, and I have to win 4 out of 7 days. Right, so at every level, this sequence of skill shows me that there's some grace. That me winning the year does not mean I have to win 3 like every single day, all 12 months. It means I can win 9 out of 12 months. For me to win the quarter, right, I can win 2 out of 3 months and still get there. For me to win the month, I can win 3 out of 4 weeks. For me to win the week, I can win 4 out of 7 days, right? Gives us this grace, right? And so now when we break it all the way down, your only mission is to see, how do I win today? What will get me to win today so that I can take the success from today and win tomorrow, right? Maybe we won't win tomorrow, but now we have, 5 more days, right, to start winning. So start to win the day. If you can win the days, you'll win the weeks. If you can win the weeks, you'll win the month. If you can win the months, you'll win the year. If you can win the year, you win the rest of your life. Right, so start looking at skill sequences. Skill sequencing. What is the skill that you need to learn and master and be in it long enough so you are a master of it, and then move on to the next one? And that is the true definition of becoming great, right? Not knowing a lot of great things is actually being great, right? I had a client, a student come in, pretty brand new to golf, right? 11-year-old, well, 10 on the verge of turning 11. And, mom had plans, he had plans, and big dreamer, super highly committed junior golfer, but brand new, but had big dreams of wanting to win junior events, wanted to play in college, love golf. And mom saw it a little bit differently. And mom saw it as, yeah, I want to support his dreams, but, he played a golf tournament and he lacks confidence. Right, and as much of the skills that we start to look at, right, when we look at skill sequencing in my head and diving in, right, if you're a player and you have a coach, some of the conversations that you need to have needs to go deep, right, needs to go into what is going to get you to move, right? And so having a conversation with a 10 to 11-year-old on, you feel, and he doesn't really much understand confidence and depth as an adult. But asking simple question how do you feel when you played that one tournament, where he can then come in and say and be totally honest and set up an environment where it's honest, where he's like, man, I was terrified. I'm thinking of and I could resonate because I've been there, right, at every single stage of my career. He's like, my hands are shaking. I can't tee up the golf ball. I'm nervous. Everybody's watching me. I'm gonna miss it. And then I lost my first golf ball. And I'm thinking I'm gonna run out of golf balls. Everybody's thinking why is this guy playing with me? And right, and it goes on, and oh my gosh, I can totally see why that you would lack confidence, right? And how confidence is the skill in this equation, right? As much technique as we need, confidence is the skill that you need to sequence first, right? And so now it's developing a plan. How do we become masterful in confidence while moving along the mission of winning golf tournaments? Because he wants to be a junior golf champion and a world-class golfer, right? And we could do so much technique. How do you hold it? How's your posture? How do you stand? Let's learn the putting if you want to get your scores down, right? Starting at, I think his first tournament he played was in the 60s for 9 holes, right? And he understands enough about score. But there's so much world-class technique that you can throw on that equation, especially for somebody that's fairly new, right? But it's oftentimes asking the question to yourself, what is it that's going to excite me the most? And what is the skill that I need? And for him, as much as he wanted to win, he loves hitting the ball far, and he loved hitting driver. Even though he understands scoring is what it is, but we can give him all the technique in scoring and hitting the putts and the chips, and if it doesn't excite him, he won't do it. He won't be able to win the day, right? And so everything was built around the sequence of skill sequencing of confidence, right? Came in hitting it 123 yards for his driver. And he comes in like, what would make it so exciting for you that would create confidence for yourself, right? And again, it's part of language, right? It's about creating your own confidence. And he would be like, man, it'd be amazing if I could hit the ball 200 yards. Like, I'd love to hit it 200 yards. Like, awesome. This is how you're gonna do it. And now we skill the sequence of building confidence. So I give him a little bit of things to do, right? And he's so excited about it because he is envisioned on the dream that he wants, the thing that's gonna excite him the most. And people start to move. That is how you accelerate massive, massive acceleration, where he goes from 120 yards, and 7 days later, when we bring him back in a week, he actually practiced. He actually did it because he wanted to do it, and then maxing out at 190 yards. We're 123 to 190 yards in 7 days. Where his goal was to get an average of 140 yards. Can we gain 20 yards on average? We'll go hit 10 balls and we got to average 140. That was the target that we set. Very, very specific target. Ryan gets it moving, and he came in 7 days. His average was 165. So he blew his 1 week target out, and he maxed out at 190. And his big, big dream of hitting it 200 yards, he was just 10 yards away. And when we look at the scope of things, the mission and the skill sequencing that we set in place was building confidence. How much acceleration and confidence do you think this junior golfer had built in 7 days? Which then brought him into his tournament, and the feedback from his tournament went from the 60s to the high 40s, but still nervous, but comfortably nervous, where he didn't have all those crazy thoughts. So again, if you guys want massive acceleration in your golf games, and again, it's not just performance in score, but it's the fulfillment of the journey, the thing that's going to keep you going, the thing that's going to move you the most, right? Start to look beyond the traditional formula of world-class technique plus more practice equals world-class results. Start looking at the formula of skill sequencing. What is the sequence of the skills? What's a skill that I really need that's going to move me the most, and how can I master that? Do that, and you will see massive, massive acceleration and fulfillment in your golf games and your lives.